Warning, you are about to enter the BGP suite. No thongs, no boy shorts, no thigh highs, no commandos are permissible. BGP, big girl panties only. So pull up to woman up. And no, please don't leave with your panties in a bunch.
Good afternoon. Welcome to BGP. You know, rejection is a hell of a drug. Today we're going to talk about love and loss. The title of today's episode will be called When Love Kills. And we have a special guest in the BGP suite today. Welcome, Mr. Brian Bentley.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Brian.
Thank you for having me.
How are you today?
I'm doing great.
Great. So, besides being funny as hell, because I've read several of your books, would you go ahead and introduce yourself to our audience?
I'm a former Los Angeles police officer. I was with LAPD for 10 years. After several years on the job, I decided to write about my experience, and I wrote about the violence on the police department and the police brutality, and also another book that I wrote about. It was called Hit Me Once, Hit Me Twice, and it was about domestic violence. And so that's one of the subjects that is very personal to me, and something that's needed, and people need to talk about it, and it needs to be addressed.
Yes. So, Neisha and I were talking about this topic, and I was saying that every month when you go down your news feed on social media, that you're seeing violence against women. And Neisha kind of corrected me, and she said that we can see it every week, where somebody is being stalked and they're murdered. Somebody is killing their baby mama after a baby shower, killing their baby mama just for being the baby mama. And a husband has killed his wife. An estranged husband has killed his wife. Somebody has killed their girlfriend. Somebody has killed their ex-girlfriend. A girlfriend has killed their boyfriend. A girlfriend has killed their baby daddy. A wife has killed their husband. And when you see it, you don't even want to open it up. And it seems like that we have become so desensitized to violence. And there used to be a time where we didn't see hate crimes or crimes of passion coming so readily out of the African-American community. And I know this is a sensitive topic to talk about, but it's something that we must discuss. And that's why it was very important for us to have a man come in and speak on this so we can get that balance of man and female understanding. So, Brian, I know that during your career on the police force that you answered a lot of domestic violence calls. Can you tell us about that, please?
Well, to say that I answered a lot of domestic violence calls is an understatement. We handle domestic violence calls all day and all night. We're seeing this now because of social media and because we're seeing it all around the world. Mm-hmm. But as a police officer, I saw it every night, all night. There would be times where I would literally, you log onto your computer and you have 3 or 4 domestic violence calls waiting for you in the queue. There were some days where that's all you did was handle domestic violence calls, nothing else. No party calls, no gang member calls, nothing but domestic violence calls or a family dispute. So as a police officer, it's not new to me, and it's still hard to see, but I experienced it every day.
So I was going to ask you, was it more prevalent during the weekdays or on the weekends? So you're saying that it just happens all the time.
It happens all the time. You see probably the more violent ones on the weekend and during holidays, especially around this time of the season. But it's something that's an ongoing thing. It happens all the time. And a lot of times it's repeat calls. Sometimes we go to a call and we already know who we're going to talk to before we get there. And we already know what the outcome is going to be.
So there's a segment in your book where you said that you had been called out for a domestic violence call, and when you got there, and the lady answered the door. She was all bloody, and then you looked inside, and the man was all bloody, and they were looking at you like, who called y'all? We didn't call you.
Exactly. And it's, I guess for some people in relationships, it's part of the norm. Something that they see is something love that they have for each other, the passion. But what's interesting about it is that when I first started as a police officer, I started before the O.J. Simpson case. And back then, the laws were different. So we would respond to a call. We would see a woman all bloody, beat up, half dead, and we'd been down and asked her, "Are you okay? Do you want your husband arrested?" And if they said no, we'd leave.
Yep.
You know, that was it. That was before the OJ case. That's the way we handled domestic violence calls. Then after that, the laws changed, and if we saw just a scratch on either party, a lot of times we take both of them. We arrest both of them. So the laws have changed, and hopefully, you would think that things would be getting better, but as you see in the media, it doesn't seem like it's really working. You know.
So would you say it's gotten worse because of the pandemic and that, you know, people are at home more?
Yeah, I would think so. I would think the pandemic has a lot to do with it. You know, anytime in any situation, even not even in an abusive relationship, but when you're with someone all the time, it's kind of hard. You know, relationships are difficult. Period. You know, and if you're in a bad relationship, it's just that more difficult and that more turbulent.
So, how are you trying to de-escalate domestic violence calls?
Well, as a police officer, first of all, I want to say that I never wanted to go to a domestic violence call. It wasn't my focus. I came to South LA. I was born and raised in the area. I came to South LA because I wanted to curb the gang violence, stop what was going on with gang members and the gang violence. I didn't want to go to domestic violence calls. That was not even in my thought process. And so when I went to a domestic violence call early on, it was just I wanted to get it over with as quickly as possible. You know, it was something that you didn't want to focus on. Providing good service wasn't a major concern of mine. It was just basically getting over the call as quickly as possible because I knew that whatever I did at the moment was only like a Band-Aid. It wasn't going to stop the situation. You can't go to a call and stop 10 years of abuse and something that's been going on for decades.
Question, do men or women call more frequently?
In my experience, the neighbors call more frequently. Okay. You know, not the women, not the men, but the neighbors. The neighbors get tired of hearing the fighting. Maybe early on, the woman may call, but generally it's always the neighbors or a family member that calls that suspects something. Most of the time, it's usually a third party that calls.
So would you say when you got there that some of these situations are petty and that they could have been resolved without use of violence?
That's difficult. I've been married for over 20 years. And like I said, relationships are difficult. People handle them differently. And it's not, and when something happens, there's violence, it's not something that just happened that day or from an incident that happened that day. Generally, the person who's the abuser has been a victim at some point in their life. So you're dealing with their demons. Their demons as a child. Their demons from their father, from their mother, from an abusive relationship, verbal abuse or physical abuse. So it's not something that is addressed right at that moment. And it's not something that as a police officer you can address at that moment. And for women who are involved with abusive men, I know a lot of women try to change their man. You can't just change the man. You got to change you have to address the whole background of why they are the way they are. You have to, and it's not something that you can do alone. You need counseling, you need professional help because it's not you, it's not the moment, it's not something you said, it's something that happened decades ago in their childhood or in their early teenage years.
So I know that you worked on the west side and the south side, is that correct?
Yeah, I worked 2 years at West LA Division, and I spent approximately about 8 years in Southwest Division. The difference is that in Southwest Division, which is where we are now in this area here in South LA, we had a lot of people who would call the police immediately. When there was a battery or an argument, they would call the police. We like to use the police to handle our social interactions or our social problems. We do that right away. When I was at West LA, I would take reports from women maybe in their 60s, 65. They've been married for 40 years. And when you talk to them, you'll say, well, has he hit you before? And they'll say, well, yeah, he's been beating on me for like 40 years. And now I'm tired of it, right? They've been taking abuse for 30, 40 years. And now they decide that they want to do something about it. So it's not something that they don't call right away. It takes time for them to build up until they're just really fed up. And a lot of times in the white neighborhoods, on the west side, they try to use other means to handle their issues other than calling the police.
So I was looking at a case that happened a few days ago where this woman for 20 years was reporting to the police of the abuse that she was receiving at the hands of an ex. She also filed a restraining order against the ex. And the last time he broke it, he was sentenced to 1 year in jail for breaking that restraining order. And when he got out, he showed up to her house. She called the police. Police didn't show up. Second time she called the police, still no show up. The third time the police was called was by a quote-unquote witness who was outside who happened to hear strange noises. And when they got in there, they found her dead. And when they did the investigation, they realized the witness who heard strange noises was the man who the restraining order was on, who killed her. But she had been fighting this and trying to look for protection for 20 years. And to no avail did she receive that protection. And in my opinion, I feel like the system failed her. And people can easily say, well, just move. She did. And he still found her, you know. So my question to you is, as a police officer, when you were showing up to those repeated calls for the repeated offenders or whatnot, did you really talk to like the abuser, kind of, you know, like, hey, look, this can we can lock you up, we can do this, or her, and tell her like we can get you some help, we can get you out of this if you want to. Like, did you talk to them at all?
I did, but what's interesting about what you're saying is that oftentimes we feel that when we get a restraining order, that's the end of it. When you get a restraining order, that is the beginning of the situation when it really gets worse. Because generally before then, your abuser, and I'm just saying I'm just using a man. It's not always a man. It's,
correct.
It could be a
woman.
woman.
It could be a woman. Yes.
But I'm referring to men. But a lot of times, men in that process, they think that they can still get you back. They still think that they have a chance. They don't think that you're serious. But when you get a restraining order and you go to court and get a restraining order, because it's a long process, many people think that getting a restraining order, you just snap your finger or you sign something. Right. It's not it. You got to go to court, and there's a lot of paperwork you got to fill out. So once a man knows that you went through all those steps, they know you're serious. They know it's over. And that's when they become desperate. That's when either they become really violent, extreme, that they've lost hope that they can't get you back, so nobody's going to get you. Right? You're entering that period where it's just really dangerous for you. That's the most dangerous time after you file that restraining order. And women are under the impression that a restraining order will actually protect them. A restraining order does not protect them. Yeah. You have to protect yourself, or you have to, get somebody to help you through that process. You can't do it by yourself. You need support, because that's the most dangerous time. And that's the time when they're going to come look for you and they've given up, and they're going to, say, forget it. If I can't have you, you ain't going to be happy. Right. That's that moment that you're that period that you're going through. And as a police officer, we tell people that, but, your hands are tied because we can't continue to, we can't focus on one person. As a police officer, I did do a lot of extra patrols for people, for domestic violence victims, or after they departed from their significant other. And we did get a lot of repeat calls. A couple of times we caught people stalking their girlfriends. But it's a constant, it's a constant thing. You're going from one call to another. You can't, as a police officer, you cannot protect victims.
Right.
They have to find a way to protect themselves and to be cautious and know that what they're in is very serious and it's a long-going process.
I have found like the restraining order is basically like a paper trail. And it's like one of many tools that you have in place to protect yourself in the event you have to maybe even use a different type of force to get him up off of you. My question to you is, have you ever, during your career, have you ever went to a police officer's home that has...
I did. We actually, it wasn't a police officer's home, but it was one of my partners who was dating a young lady who lived in our division. And so she was at her boyfriend's house, and he went in and kicked in the door, and he beat her. But police officers have a high rate of domestic violence and family issues. That's something the police department doesn't talk about, but domestic violence among LAPD is very high. It's very high. I don't know the exact reasons. People will say it's because of the stress, but I don't know. But it is very high, and we do respond to calls a lot of times that involve law enforcement officers.
Do you think once a restraining order is placed on an individual that their ego gets in the way? They how dare you, not me, you're not going to break up with me. Their ego gets in the way, their selfishness gets in the way, and then that causes them to be more angry because of the restraining order.
Yeah, I definitely believe that. In domestic violence situations, when a police is called, is very very volatile situation. You have egos that are involved, and a lot of times when you first get there, the person who's the abuser will be very upset, ready to fight, don't care, don't care if you call the cops. I don't care. They're ready to fight everybody. Usually, by the time you talk to them, you're taking them to the station, the situation is diffused, and they calm down. You can see they're a regular person that's just upset. A lot of times they apologize, but at that moment they're very just in a very dangerous state of mind when you first get there, and they don't care if you call the police or not. And for a police officer, it's one of the most dangerous times and dangerous calls that we go to. So if it's dangerous for us, it's dangerous more dangerous for the victim.
Yeah, because I also saw another video where the woman had called the police on her child's father because he was beating the shit out of her. And when the police came to the door, she ran out. She was running out the door towards the police, and the guy was coming out with his weapon. And the police ran back down the stairs with while the guy's like, come here to the girl, telling her, come back. And she's trying to hide from the police, and he's running. Instead of pulling his weapon out and killing him, instead, he ran. And so I was just like, just that kind of a situation right there would frighten me. Because if the police can't protect in that moment, who's going to protect that person?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the truth of the matter is police can't protect victims. You have to find a way to protect yourself. You have to find a way to protect yourself at that moment, but the best protection is to try to leave the situation before it gets that bad. Before it gets to the point where the person is out of control and is violent. So, like I said, as a police officer, it's very discouraging to me and very disappointing, but it's just it's almost like a hopeless situation. And also as a police officer, we would arrest people and they would be out shortly.
Within 24 hours.
Within 24 hours. And, as I was one of the rare police officers that worked in the same division where I lived in. I worked in Southwest Division and I lived in Leimert Park. So there were several times, and it's kind of funny, but it's not, but several times I would arrest the guy, and then maybe a day later or 2 days later, I see him at the salad bar at Sizzler. The couple, just all happy and stuff. And it seemed like every time I went to Sizzler, I would see a domestic violence, a couple that was involved in that, And that was very discouraging. But as a police officer, you learn that that's just the way it is, and you just got to do your job and provide the information, and hopefully, that it'll come out, it'll work out the best. But women are under the illusion that the whole restraining process is quick. The restraining order is not.
It's not.
It's a very long process. You got to go to court several times. There's continuances, and it's like, to get a restraining order is like a real trial. You have to prove why you have that restraining order. And it's a very difficult and a long process, and it's very painful to victims because they have to write everything down. What happened, what happened here, dates. You have to provide a lot of information. And that's one thing that one thing when I wrote my book, which is called Hit Me Once, Hit Me Twice, I wanted to put stuff like that in there where people would understand what the whole process is. And you need to make note of every time there's an abuse. Just go back, because you have to prove that in court.
So typically when you would show up to a call, are the officers trained to provide resources, to maybe have a woman officer come out to speak to the woman? What's the process when you usually show up?
Police officers are trained, and all the police officers are trained by, they have a standard by the state of California that all police officers have to go by, have received the same type of training. So it doesn't matter if the sheriff show up or LAPD shows up or what other agency shows up. We all have a basic same training as how to handle domestic violence calls. Do we go through them all the time? No. Police officers take shortcuts all the time. They think it's a waste of time. They think you'll be back with your abuser the next day. They don't think you'll follow up. And I've never been to a hearing for a restraining order. I've arrested men for domestic violence, like literally maybe about 400 or 500 people. And I've only been to court one time. I only went to court one time in 10 years on a domestic violence case. So it's, police officers rush through it. They rush through the process. As a victim, you have to demand and ask, make sure that they do their diligence, because they can call someone out. There's a number of agencies that can come out, nonprofit agencies that can come out and support you and walk you through the process. But as a police officer, you do not get that kind of service, especially from a male police officer. Maybe if you get a female, but police officers try to handle it as fast as they can.
And I can understand how it gets frustrating, because I think it's like 7 or 8 times is the statistics where women go back. Because we keep thinking, oh, he's going to change, or he's going to, and it's the fear. I mean, sometimes you are in crippling fear because of the very thing you mentioned. Like you were sharing, they don't come back, or they show up and they're out of jail immediately. So it's a hard place to be, and not to follow through with it, because you don't know if you're going to be protected. I went as far as reporting it to a We Tip hotline. And I didn't hear about that call again until we were in court, when he was being sentenced to 27 years to life. When it was, they recorded it and everything. And I said, hey, it's this guy over here. He's on drugs. I, was very detailed, thinking, okay, I'm going to be okay. And then maybe day 1, they're going to show up. Maybe day 2. They never showed up. So the system failed me, and they failed many, many women, in those situations. So, and I do understand why officers get there, and it's like, because I've seen women too that will fight the officers. They get there, and then now they're protecting their abuser. So it's a hard place to be. So I do, I totally understand.
I went to a call where a lady had just gotten out of the hospital. She was an older lady. She had just gotten out of, maybe not older, my age. So she was in her 60s. Well, she was in her 60s. Okay. So she got out of the hospital, and when she came home, she didn't cook dinner. So her husband beat her up. So we arrested the husband. We took him to the car. My partner took the husband to the car. I'm there by myself, and I'm talking to her, and she goes, I don't want him arrested. And I said, okay, fine, he won't be arrested. I said, just tell me what happened. So she told me the story. And, of course, because of the laws, we have to arrest that person.
Correct.
So, I worked out a lot. I didn't have a problem, being by myself. So I just told her, I said, hey, look, he's going to jail. She said, you said you weren't going to take him to jail. And I said, well, well. And I turned my back, and she jumped on me and started grabbing my face, and she just went off.
Defending her abuser.
She just went off. And, I let my guard down. But the thing is that, that situation is just very, It's very volatile, and you don't know what's going to happen. And in the end, she was the only one that got jail time.
For attacking you.
For attacking me.
Yep.
Wow.
He didn't get any jail time,
Yep.
no probation, no counseling, nothing.
Yeah.
Because she recanted her statement, but she was the only one that went to jail. The only one.
So you said before the OJ case that if someone called the police for a domestic violence call, you could settle it and it didn't go to court. But then after the OJ case, they were. If you said I don't want to press charges, we made up. They were just picking them up.
Well, see, I was there during that whole period time, that whole transition. So when I was trained as a rookie, we were trained that the woman or the victim had to press charges. And then domestic violence was only a misdemeanor at the time. So you had to press charges. So, I mean, literally, we see people just beaten. And if they couldn't say they wanted to press charges, and a lot of times I had partners that would try to talk them out of it. Well, if we arrest him, then he's not going to be there. And, you got to pay your mortgage yourself, your rent yourself. Do you really want him arrested? You would have officers that would try to talk women out of that. And so that was in the beginning before the O.J. Simpson case. Right after the O.J. Simpson trial, it was like extreme. It was if you saw any bruises, any marks, you take both. So we were arresting people just hands down, just taking both people. And for some police officers, it was entertaining. We would say, well, we walk in, you wouldn't have to ask. You just look at them, they see a scar, we got a call, we just take you. And they were like, well, I was shaving. I was, okay. You explain that to a judge, right? So then it evolved to where you had to find out who the aggressor was. And so you had to make a point, ask questions, interview the people to find out who was the aggressor, because you have the right to defend yourself. So we had to work to find out who the aggressor was. So that was the transition. But immediately after the O.J. Simpson case, we were just everybody was just take them. So everybody was getting arrested.
I'm glad you spoke on that because, a few weeks ago I was watching a live where the guy was filming the woman and she was like cussing him out. You ain't this, you ain't that. Psh, you ain't this, you psh, psh. And he's like, stop hitting me. Stop it. Y'all see this? She's hitting me. You see this, right? Now, when I press charges, y'all my witnesses, right? Because, if I call the police right now, they'll say I'm the aggressor because I'm the bigger one.
Right.
And some women know that and use that to their advantage. Like, they're not going to believe you. They'll believe me.
Right. I mean, women are, they're abusers, just like men. They're abusers. And women kill men. Yes. Just as men kill women. You'll find a lot of that. And a lot of times the difference is with women is that sometimes you think that they're the abusers, but sometimes they let things build up. For instance, there was a thing that I wrote about in my book that this lady had been abused by her husband for years, and then he had stopped, but he came home one day late, and everything just manifested, and so she shot him like 10 times. And that was all stemming from the past. So women handle it differently. It builds up, and then sometimes they just snap. I mean, we see TV shows all the time.
Yeah.
It's so bad and so prevalent that we have TV shows, numerous TV shows about women killing men.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Snapped.
Yes. Snapped. Yes.
I don't let my wife watch that.
You don't want her to get ideas.
Yeah, I turn that off every time she come in the room. But it's so prevalent now that we have multiple TV shows about that. But women handle it differently than men, and women can be, and women are the abusers in relationships.
And the roles sometimes change. Sometimes, like you just mentioned, sometimes you have just gotten up to where you just can't take it anymore. Right. So that's what I wanted to ask is, what is the level of defending yourself? At what point, even with the restraining order, are you able to use, what kind of force are you able to use if you have a restraining order against someone and that person is stalking or they're coming to your home or to your job and it becomes a situation where your life is threatened? I know it has to be the same level of abuse that's are or something that's used against you? Is that how it goes?
Well, first thing I want to address is something you mentioned. You said at your job. Women go into hiding all the time when they're abused by their husbands or boyfriends.
Yes.
But one thing that a husband or boyfriend knows is that you have to go to work. So most of the domestic violence, the real violent ones, take place at jobs.
Yes.
You'll see on the news where someone gets shot in front of their job, in front of their office, in the parking lot.
Right.
And that's because the man or the abuser always knows you got to go to work. You have to go to work, so they know where to find you. No matter, you can hide out at your parents' house, your friend's house, but they always know you have to go to work. And so a lot of times they're lying and waiting for you at work. And so that's one thing I wanted to address. But you have the right to defend yourself. And you should, if you're in that situation, you should defend yourself. But the best thing you need to do is just get out of the relationship early before it gets to that point. That's the best defense, is to get out before. And once you get a restraining order, you just have to use whatever means you can to defend yourself, but you have the right to defend yourself. No one should put their hands on you. And yeah, everybody has the right to defend themselves.
Yeah, because I was thinking, I'm like, if once you make that decision and say enough's enough, and you decide to go through with the restraining order, you basically have to, in my opinion, start over. Like, wherever you're working, you might as well let that go. Wherever you're living, you might as well let that go. Wherever, whatever you're used to being in those locations, you might as well just start over and go elsewhere, because if you do just happen to go back to, feel like you can just go back to daily living, like, okay, I did the restraining order, that's it. It doesn't stop them. Like, I literally saw a lady, she got killed at her job. Like, the husband, the soon-to-be ex-husband walked up to the job, called her outside because she was, she worked at a bank. She went outside and he blew her brains out.
Right.
And
when you're in that situation, first thing you need to do is notify your job, notify the security at the job. And people don't do that. People don't think like that. And I wrote that too in my book, because people don't, it's a whole thought process that you have to go through once you file that restraining order, and people don't know that and they don't go through that. But the first thing you need to do is notify your job and the security at your job so they can look out for that person. Another thing too, real quick, is that when you file a restraining order, a lot of people don't file restraining orders because you have to put your address and you have to put your work address and you have to lay out everything. So the person has the whole plan of where you are, where to find you, because that's where they're not supposed to be. And it's all laid out in the restraining order. So a lot of people don't get restraining orders because of that.
I think a lot of times people don't tell their jobs is because they know they can get fired.
yes.
Yeah, shame, but they know they can get fired. Your ex keeps coming up to the job. That's a security breach.
Yeah.
A friend of mine told me that he does security at an Amazon warehouse, and a young man actually got his ex-girlfriend's badge, and he badged himself in and found her and was like, what's up now? And began to beat her on her job, and they had to hurry up and get him up out of there. But too many calls on your job, too many, let me speak to Mona.
Yep.
They're like, you got to go.
Yep.
Right.
But here's the thing that I found, that when, at least with LA County and more employers are now starting to be trained on what to look for if a person is actually maybe experiencing some domestic violence at home. Because you go to work and you got a concealer that doesn't match, and you got a busted lip, and you're making up these stories as to why this is happening. A lot of employers now are trying to help victims and trying to identify, they've used my story as a model for how to train some of our HR department on how to identify people that are going through domestic violence, because we don't want to say nothing. You're embarrassed, you're ashamed. Why you stay? You like getting your ass whooped? It's all kind of stuff that you hear. So I think more employers, as time has gone on, like you said, since the OJ thing, and a lot of employees are now trying to be mindful and help their staff.
Well,
So.
I agree, and there are a lot of resources out there. There are a lot of domestic violence shelters, and when I was a police officer, and even now, police officers don't know where the domestic violence shelters are.
Right.
Yeah.
We have the people from the shelters come pick the people up at the police station, and they take them to the shelters because a lot of police officers are abusers, and they don't want the police officers to know where those shelters are, which is really kind of crazy if you think about it. But there are a lot of resources out there, and people have to reach out to them, and then they have to follow through, and it's just very difficult. It's an emotional roller coaster that you go through, and it's easy to say, but it's difficult to actually put it in a plan and follow it.
So we know that we get very, very angry with one another from time to time, and we start having disagreements, and we start having arguments, and someone says, "I'll kill you." First thoughts?
Ooh, I'm gone. I'm not going to find out if he's serious or not. We're done.
Yes, me too. I now that I know that really means that's real. Like when somebody tells you that, they can really go through with something like that. I think you still have to have a safety plan. Just leaving, because what I have found is because domestic violence is about power and control, and when that abusive person feels like they've lost that control, that's the scariest time for anybody that's trying to get out of a situation. So I'm going to make a plan. Oh, yeah, I'm getting up out of there. But I'm going to make a plan to move. You know, I'm not just going to abruptly get up out of there, because that's when he feels like he's lost that control, and he's going to try to kill me, for real.
And see, that situation is not only dangerous for the person who's being abused, but it's dangerous for anybody that they bring into the situation with them. You go to a parent's house, and we've seen it where where a boyfriend or ex-husband comes and kills the whole family, the parents.
Just happened.
You are bringing that danger to everybody that's in this situation, brothers, neighbors. People go to their neighbor's house when they're being abused, and they get shot too. So when you're in that situation, you are bringing that danger to other people into the equation. And that's something you have to be mindful, and that's something for other people who are helping victims, is that you're now putting yourself in danger too.
Which further keeps you stuck. The more fear of leaving, because he done said he going to kill my whole family. I already got 2 strikes. I'm going to get 3 strikes anyway. I'm going to get 25 years of life anyway. So I might as well go for killing you. You know what I mean? So, yeah, it's scary.
I just think that words have meaning.
Yeah.
And when you have declared your love for me and you can't get your way, or like you say, you're out of control, you have some unresolved issues from your past. You may have some mommy or daddy issues. You might have some ex-girlfriend issues. I might have just said something that triggered you that, Mona used to do me like that when I was, in my early 20s. And I just think that when you say I'm going to kill you, that lets me know that you don't value me and anybody around me, and you don't value yourself and anybody around you. That's a selfishness. That's a selfish act. You're out of control. You don't have any conflict resolution. And I have to go. And sometimes as women, we think that's cute. Oh, he's gonna kill me. Yeah. He loves me so much that he say kill me. Right. Nah, you gotta go. And to go back to the domestic violence situation, hit me one time, I'm gone.
Yeah, yeah.
We think, oh, I'm sorry. No, it's not going to cut it.
It'll never happen again.
You have some mental issues that have nothing to do with me, where you believe that you can put your hands on me to resolve something. So when you think about killing, and nobody deserves to kill anybody, there was a part in one of your books where you said that your partner was going to be 30 minutes late. And so you had to go to the desk. And as you were helping this young lady with her report, there was a gentleman that came back, and he said, I need to talk to you. And you was like, you're cutting the line, you need to go back. And he said, but I really need to talk to you. And you was like, can you see what I'm doing? And he's very sarcastic in his books. He's really funny. Even though it's a serious thing, he's very funny in his book, because I could just like relate to how he was talking to this man. So he went back, he came back again, and he was like, okay, what happened? What do you want to tell me? And he said, I just killed my girlfriend over the weekend.
Stuffed her under the bed.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, this guy, he actually he was on parole for murder. And so he was staying at a halfway house. And so he strangled this young lady, and he strangled her and stuffed her under the bed. And he thought that he waited there because there was a lot of noise, and he thought the neighbors or somebody would call the police. And they never did, so he decided to take the bus down to the police station. And he was just so cold and callous, like it was nothing.
No empathy.
No empathy. He was just removed from the whole situation. And we had officers that go out there and look, and sure enough, he had killed the person just as he had told me. But the thing was, it was just nothing there. He just did it. He had done it before, and he explained to me that whenever he smokes crack, he loses it, and or he takes drugs, he loses it. And he's very apologetic. He apologized, but it wasn't sincere. But he said that's just what happens when he takes drugs, and that's something you need to be aware of too. Is if you have someone who's abusive, an addict, they're not themselves. They lose that the rational thinking and the morals, and they just act on impulse, and that's something you have to be aware of. There's a lot of things you have to take notice when you have a partner, when you're in a relationship. You have to know people and understand when they're dangerous, when they're being funny. You have to take those things seriously.
So first of all, as a human being, but as an officer, when somebody just right in front of you says, "I just killed somebody," what are your first thoughts? How does that make you feel?
Well, in that situation, I didn't believe it. So, I was just like joking, like, thought he just said that so he can get in front of the line, to make a report. And then once I asked some questions, and it was serious, then, it just, my whole thought, process changed, right? Is he armed now? Did he come here to kill everybody else, Is he going to go out, commit suicide or just,
right.
Why is he here? What's going on, right? So your whole thought process changes. But as a police officer, you deal with that a lot. You deal with people who are either going through psychotic episodes. They're not the same, person as they were 10 minutes ago. And which is another subject maybe you guys want to talk about later is, mental illness.
I was getting ready to go
Definitely.
there.
Definitely.
How do you deal with that? How do you deal with people who are mentally ill?
Yeah.
And police officers are not adequately trained
correct.
to handle people who are mentally ill.
Correct.
I was fortunate that while I was a police officer, I also worked for D.D. Hirsch, which is a crisis mental facility. And so I had a little more domestic violence training and a little more mental health training than most police officers because I worked at that agency. But they don't have training for that. And police officers don't know how to react. You can come to someone who's mentally ill and they're just extremely violent and yelling, and you think they're just about to kill everybody.
So you kill them.
Right. And then you talk to them for a little while, diffuse the situation, and they're just, back to normal. So, you don't know what you're dealing with. And when you're dealing with abusive relationships, you don't know what you're dealing with. You may have someone who's really mentally ill, who has a problem that needs medication, or you can just be dealing with some evil dude. You just don't know what you're dealing with. And when you're in a relationship, you need to find that out. So you can, if you want to help or help yourself in that situation, you need to know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, because I just want to say, like, again, nobody has a right to kill anybody, but when you get in these heated arguments, somebody might say, "I'll kill you," but when you go to the extreme measure or have the extreme reaction and you actually take somebody's life that you said you love, you have to have some mental issues. You have to have some mental deficiencies to actually take somebody's life. So what do you think that women do? And I'm talking to the ladies, and you can co-sign us. That, like I say, nobody has a right to kill anybody. What would we say women might do that may cause a man to want to kill us?
I mean, there's different.
I got one.
Okay.
Let me start.
All right.
Emasculation. When we emasculate a man. When we make them feel less than a man. When we're in public and we're talking crazy to him, that may make him snap. Maybe, yes.
It's possible, definitely, because it could take them back down that memory lane of how their mommy talked to them. So that's definitely true. I can definitely see them snapping and taking it out on you because of your mouth. So that's possible. For me, I would say, like the example I can give is the video I shared recently where A man was literally begging the woman to have an abortion. I don't want kids with you. I don't want to be with you. Get rid of that child. And she was just like, no, and crying and saying, I don't want to. I want to keep it. And he was like, I hate you. I fucking hate you. And there's a lot of cases that we're starting to see, especially since the pandemic, where men are killing women while they're pregnant.
Right.
Because they didn't want it.
Right.
Yeah. That's the most time that women are in danger is when they're pregnant and when they decide to leave. I think, like you said, at no point is anybody can justify killing someone.
Correct.
You know, but I think, like you said, like you start knowing the person that you're with, and you know the buttons that
The triggers.
Yeah. Exactly. You know the things that set them off, and if you know you have a person that has a tendency to be violent and you have not reached the courage to leave that situation, you don't want to be pushing no buttons. You know what I mean? You don't want to start some stuff or talk about his mama or anything that you know could trigger a reaction that could cause your life. So a lot of times you sit there silent and you don't say anything. If they are on drugs, and they're having mental issues, usually they're self-medicating with either methamphetamine or crack or whatever the case may be. And those are the things that set them, they're up here at this point. So every little thing is just
Annoying.
Yeah.
Annoyance to them.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think once a woman realizes that she's with a very violent man that could be triggered like that, you need to be starting to set up some type of way to get away, get out the state. You know, I think it's the National Domestic Violence Hotline even helps you get out of the state if necessary. There's tons of resources out there, not as many as that's needed, because I think it's 1 in 4 women are abused by an intimate partner. Right. So it's, you know, we don't have enough resources. I know in the city I live in, we have 1 shelter. And they're always full. So you don't have places that people are scared to go to shelters. They think shelters are nasty, and they're picturing them like this homeless shelter where there's raggedy men and dirty
abusers
people.
abusers
in there. So, and some of these shelters are really nice, well kept, and, you know, very protective. So, yeah, it's scary.
I would say that, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, with us knowing that men are logical and we are supposed to be the emotional ones, once a man tears down that wall, becomes vulnerable, shares his fears, shares his disappointments with a woman, and you use the words that come out of your mouth to, like I said, emasculate him, that may cause him to want to kill you.
Well, I disagree, because I don't think there should be anything that anyone can say to make you want to kill your partner.
I'm just talking about, like, in general, things that women may do. Right. There's a different love language between men and women. Well,
I mean, for me, my beautiful wife is from Inglewood, and my baby's mama's from Carson. So I heard a lot of things, right? I've been through a lot, but and I know where there's just times I'm like, man. But I've never gotten to the point where I wanted to hurt anyone, hurt anybody in a relationship. And that's because of the strong family background that I had, you know, with my parents and, you know, the relationships I've seen and been around. I've never seen any abusive, you know, any from my father or from my brothers. So, you know, it's just not there for me. But for many people, it's not. And they're triggers. The things that you're saying are triggers because of things that happened when they were kids, when they were teenagers, when they're young adults. They're triggers. So you can say things that trigger certain responses. So you have to understand what you're dealing with. You know, when you're involved in a relationship, you need to know that person's past. You know what they've been through. You guys need to have serious talk, and you need to do some investigation, some background investigation, because if they've been hurt, you can say almost anything to trigger somebody. It might not even be that bad.
That's what I was going to bring up. Do you think a lot of women's vetting processes are off? We don't spend enough time finding out who they are. We don't spend enough time finding out who their exes were and why they're not together. Because I do think that sometimes we have more lust relationships than we have in-depth relationships, and we don't know that person's past. I would say playing with somebody's feelings, playing with somebody's emotions, playing with somebody's time. For the people that haven't came from two-parent households, that don't know how to interact with males and females, there's a lot of things that could happen that when you are an emotional man, what I'm saying, and men are problem solvers, they are not supposed to be as emotional as women are, that they would lash out and cause you physical harm. So if a relationship is over, don't keep going back and forth, leading them on, thinking that there's hope for them to, to have a reconciliation. Okay, if you do this, then I'll get back with you, and they do that, and that's not enough. I think sometimes we play a lot of games because we like the make-up to break up type of scenarios. That's what I'm saying. Just preventive measures for women to try to check themselves on what they do when interacting with men and you don't know how they're going to respond to certain things. Breaking up with somebody, getting back together, using the man's resources. Perfect situation for me would be you make more than him. You knew that in the beginning. He's not measuring up financially. And then you break up with him because he's broke and he feels some type of way about that. Might cause him to snap, because he thinks you used him. Another thing I would think of is sex. Some men don't like to be used as a piece of meat. And when they think that you what I'm talking about, because I've heard it. I'm not just
you're right.
speculating. I'm just kind of throwing it out here for the audience, because this is also, again, a teaching moment. Using a man for sex. Some men say, oh, she used me for a piece of meat and I'm going to get her. So it's certain things that we need to do as women that don't push their buttons because we think it's cute.
I'll say this. I definitely, I can agree with you on that. I do think that we have to watch our words. We have to watch how we talk to men, because you don't know, especially if you haven't done the research or the investigation on that person, you don't know where they come from. I do want to clear something up, though. There are abusers that come from two-parent homes. They seen mama beat daddy ass, or they seen daddy beat mommy ass. And one or two things can happen. Either one, they turn out not to be the abuser, but they become the abused because they're used to seeing that, or they become the abuser.
Exactly.
So you definitely have to do your research with the people that you vet and get to know before you get in that relationship, before it's too late. Because if not, you do kind of end up in those situations. Also, you do want to watch for triggers, because some men be like, don't play with me like that. Don't play with me. I don't play like that. Don't do that, and they tell you. And if you, one of those mouthy women that are just like, psh, I'll say it again and do it. And then he's like, I told you. Now you sitting there like confused and wondering, why'd you attack me? And it's like, well, you kind of, you started it. He gave you a warning, whether you took it or not. He gave you a warning and you didn't take heed. So I just wanted to say that. But yeah, we do have to be mindful of our words. We do have to look into our backgrounds on both sides when getting to know somebody. Because I know some men that I've associated with in the past, not dated, but associated with in the past, who I've had to counsel. They had a history of beating the shit out of women. Everybody knew it in the neighborhood. So they would tell women, don't go to that one. Leave him alone. He crazy. Don't. And some women still be like, but well.
Because most women think, if
change
he's crazy, if he hit them, I'm not going to do anything to cause him to hit me or to kill me. But that person is that person. That's their character. That's what they do. They don't know how to have a conversation. I had a situation before where we're going back and forth, and he says something, I say something. He went low, I went lower, and then he said something else, and I said, spell it, and he charged towards me to choke me out because he couldn't get the last word. So sometimes those people are who they are, and there's nothing you can do to soften it,
Right.
to change it,
Right.
to make them see the errors of their ways. If they're violent, if they have no conflict resolution implements, that's something that they have to do on their own.
And here,
What?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
One thing women should look for too, in relationships, we all want attention, and we all want someone to pay attention to us and give us lots of attention. Many times, men who turn out to be stalkers, they do that because they want to control you, and you have to understand the difference between getting attention and someone who's trying to seek control. Right? Someone wants to take you here. They want to go with you here where you're going. They always want to be around you. They always want to be where you are. You have to kind of understand, is that really love? Does he really want to be with me all the time? Or is he trying to control me? Is he a controlling person? And a lot of times we'll find out that a lot of these men who are just so loving and stuff, they're just really using methods of control. And then when you realize it and you don't give them that control anymore, that's when they become
an issue.
And see, in the beginning, it seems like, oh, this is lovey, it's cutest. He want to hold my hand all the time. He called me 500 times a day. It seems like, oh, he really loves me. But that is the sign. And here you have this controlling behavior. Or, it's so many different ways that I've seen that go down. But just for a real quick, transparent moment, when we talk about people telling you stuff about individuals, like my my abuser, his ex-wife called me and told me he's been on drugs before, he's abusive, he hits women, and I'm like, girl, you just want my man back.
Absolutely, because there also was a part in your book where you said even a man said, you like him?
Yeah, exactly.
Not him.
Yeah, this one.
And several men was like, you like him?
Yes.
You're like, yeah, and they were trying to warn you, but the heart wants what the heart wants.
Exactly.
The love wants what the love wants, and when you're in that situation, you can't seem to get yourself out of it because you want it to work so much. But here's my thing. We're going to have to understand that nothing lasts forever.
That's true.
And I think that sometimes men think betrayal. Betrayal causes them to snap. Rejection causes them to snap. Sometimes it's not even, they don't even like you personally. That sexual interchange, they can't see you having sex like that with another man, and that makes them snap. So, yeah, we got to be very careful in our vetting processes on how we deal with men. Even when we're friends before we become lovers and we listen to each other and they're talking about their past girlfriends and I said this to her and I did this to her and you're like, you wouldn't do that to me. If it was me, blah, blah, blah. But if they do it to her, they'll do it to you.
Absolutely.
And we have to start taking all of that serious.
Exactly.
So, question. Of all the chapters you wrote in this book, which chapter is your favorite chapter?
My favorite chapter is somewhere in the middle where I come to light and decide that my job as a police officer is not to just arrest people, but to actually be a social worker, so to speak. As a police officer, I never wanted that. And I've always was very negative towards that. And in the book, what happens is I have a friend, a girl that I was talking to, and I came home from work, and I'm telling her I went to another domestic violence call, and I'm saying the lady was so stupid, and these women are dumb, they're getting beat up and everything, and then she tells me I was a victim. And this is something I held. This lady I held in a high regard. She had graduated from college and had a good job and came from a good family, and I'm like, what? Really? You? And then she goes on and explains her story to me. And it was at that moment that I was like, man, I'm looking at everything wrong. When I'm going to these calls, I don't take into consideration that they're human beings. It's just a call, a call and some steps I have to take because my job told me I had to take them. And then from that point, I started doing my job differently, taking the extra step, kind of empathizing with people. And it was because of the conversation that I had with my friend. Right. And that's the best chapter is when I just realized that it can happen to anybody.
Yes.
Good people.
Yes.
And police officers don't have that. First of all, as a police officer, you you get rid of all your emotions, so you're not emotionally tied to anything. It's just a job, it's statistics, it's just procedure. And so at that point, I learned that it's got to be more than just procedure.
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And so in that chapter, I don't know which one it is, but that's the best thing, that moment.
And I feel like people mean well. They really do. Those that have never experienced it, because they're quick to judge and say, well, why would you do this? And why they don't understand.
Exactly.
And each situation is different. I'm clear with that. But all people that are abused stay for different reasons, you know, and sometimes it's because of finances. Maybe it's because of you really truly love that person. You want them to go back to that individual that you first met, and they were never that in the beginning. It's so many reasons, religious reasons,
kids,
the kids.
Some people just don't want to quit.
Exactly. So if there's anything that I could say is that we have to be careful how quick we judge people in their situations because we don't know. Because trust me, I done heard it all. You stupid, you dumb, you this, you that.
Right.
But nobody knew the fear that I was in. You know, for somebody to have 2 strikes and constantly tell you, I'll kill your whole family. I'll kill you. I'll kill these kids. You don't know how to move and maneuver up out of that. And then when you finally do get the courage, he still try to kill you anyway. Stab you 18 times in front of your children who are now traumatized for the rest of their life behind it. So
I'm going to have to go a little bit against the grain as far as judging is concerned. I'm going to judge you. But I think that it takes a village of people. We talk about the village. We talk about, okay, Adrianne is in trouble. Let me call up Neisha. Let me call up Brian. Let's go get her up out of there. Let's go do some things. It's just passing the information down the line. Oh, she's stupid. Oh, she's silly. Oh, I'm going to come to you as your sister. And see, we're going to talk about it later on, but I'm going to come to you as your sister and try to pull you up out of that situation.
Right.
I got to judge you to be able to help you.
Right.
You have to want the help. Because, see, when you don't want the help, then you say somebody's judging me. Somebody doesn't know my situation. Somebody doesn't know blah, blah, blah. But when you're really ready to get out of that situation, you understand it's not judgment, sister. It's the truth. And the truth is what's needed to set you free. You see what I'm saying? So we have to stop using that word judgment like it's a bad thing, because everybody judges something in their life to be able to progress in their lives. I want to ask you about the men or anybody that abuses, anybody that kills somebody. What? I can't even think of what the hell I want to say. What are one of the main reasons why they said they just had to kill somebody that they loved? Do you know what I'm saying? Do you have a common reason that they say, you know, when you interview them afterwards, what made you snap? Do you have a commonality between the people? Do you know what I'm trying to ask?
Men just say it's love. They love hard.
Yeah.
Passion.
So
it's passion. It's very simple. I don't know what the actual reason is psychologically, but that's what they all believe.
Yeah.
So would you say that men love different than women? Hold on, let me finish. We as women, we meet a man this month, we love him. We break up with him 3 months later, we need another man, we love him too. We break up with that man and go on years after years. Every time we get with somebody, we love them. What I'm trying to ask you as for men, do you think they only have like 1 or 2 great loves, and once they decide that this is going to be the woman that I love, we don't understand how serious they are when they make those commitments?
I think men who have been emotionally abused and scarred have a different idea of love, and it means more to them, or different. It means something different to them than it does to someone who hasn't had bad experiences. One of the things we have to look at too is our women who've been abused is how are your kids going to grow up and respond, because they see that and it changes them, and a lot of times they become the abusers is because how they see what has gone on and how they've learned how to love. You know, they see that as
love.
Right, as love.
They think it's love. If mama stayed with daddy and daddy beat the shit out of her, clearly he loves her.
Okay.
So that's what I'm supposed to do when I'm in a relationship.
Right.
If he doesn't beat the shit out of me, he doesn't love me.
Correct.
And, see, and we don't address that. When we get out of relationships, out of these bad relationships, we move on, but we don't go back and counsel our kids and tell them, don't do that. That's not right. You know, we get ourselves together.
And forget about them.
And forget about kids, because we don't know that they're
traumatized,
what they're
right.
traumatized,
Exactly.
what they got from that experience. So a lot of men, they see love differently.
Yeah.
And it's because of what happened to them or what they saw.
Yeah.
So.
Not to mention when you've been around so much chaos and drama, you conform to that. You come comfortable in that. And even once you get in a healthy relationship, it seems boring.
Because you're used to the dysfunction.
Because you used to, this nigga ain't called me a bitch yet? Wait a minute. He don't love me. He weird.
He's
a punk. He's a punk. You know, so to change that mindset takes some serious therapy, some serious healthy boundaries, some major change in your life. Because if you've been in that type of mess for years and years and years, that's all you know. So it's difficult to even make those changes, even after you've been that abused that bad. You know what I mean? It's still, once you get in a healthy relationship, it seems strange.
Right.
It's true, because I've had friends that I've had conversations with where they said they purposely
start stuff.
They purposely start stuff with men because they like, I want to see how he's going to react. I want to test him. So they'll either say something with their mouth or they attack physically to see how he's going to react. And if he doesn't react or he doesn't allow what she's doing to get to them, he's a bitch.
Yeah, exactly.
He's soft.
Yeah. Or you
I don't want
do
him.
something as even more drastic as you get into a relationship with something that's just safe. You know what I mean? It's not a real attraction to the person. They cool, but your needs are not being met. But it's safe. You know, even if it did break out into a fight, it's somebody you done already sized up, and if it come down to a fight, you can handle it. Shit, I'm just keeping it 100.
You good at saying that. No. You good at saying that.
And I'm serious. I'm just telling you what I know. And from working with women in abusive relationships, it's very common.
Wow.
You get with somebody and it's like, okay, if he tried to even act like he wanted to hit me, yeah. Right.
Wow.
And it's sad, but it's true. And until you get healthy and your thinking is better, you know, I would like to think I'm in a better place now. But occasionally,
that laugh right there.
It is. It's something that you have to constantly work on if you've been in such a abusive situations. Yeah.
Final thoughts. Mr. Bentley.
Okay. This was a great show, and I'm glad you guys invited me. And I hope other people have these conversations because they're needed and it's very healthy. I don't know how many people go to dinner parties and talk about domestic violence, but you know, these are topics that need to be discussed, and so that people can feel comfortable telling people their issues and healing from them.
Final thoughts is just, like you said, and when you're in that stage of learning people and getting to know them, pay close attention. The red flags are there. Sometimes we ignore the red flags because of the green eyes and the handsomeness and all of that. But we have to really pay attention because it's right there. And later, that very thing that you ignored, you'll find at the end is why it all ended. Yeah.
I would say just, you know, as I keep saying in previous episodes, when you're dating, really vet and don't just do it based on physical attraction because physical attraction can get you killed. Right? And I'm not saying just date someone to be safe, right? But I'm saying really, really do your due diligence when getting to know the person because that's what you're supposed to do when you're dating anyway is collect, as Miss Mona used to say in one of our first episodes, collect the data and see if that data is compatible with your data, right? So if this person has a track list of abusing women in his past where he's had to take domestic violence classes and anger management classes, more than likely that shit is still in him and you may not want to, you know, continue to, you know, collect data with that person. You might want to just keep that person over there in that little friend zone and keep, you know, vetting other potentials. If that person seems to like get triggered with words, be mindful that more than likely you may say something inadvertently that could cause him to snap, and you don't want that either. And just protect yourself. When a person shows you who they are up front, if they that person that says, bitch, I'll kill you, simply out of an argument, or I'm that crazy man that if I can't have you, no one else can, prepare yourself for that exit strategy. Like, get that exit strategy, warn your family and friends, be prepared to just, move differently and, try to avert upsetting him so he doesn't kill you in that moment, but cut your losses, as best you can, as safely as you can. And that's my final thought.
I'm going to say that, I'm going to piggyback off of Neisha when she says, get that exit strategy immediately. I think the longer that you let somebody abuse you, you're saying you accept it. You're saying that I did something wrong for you to do this. We have to start honoring being able just to be in one another's lives and appreciating that time. And when the relationship is over, it's over. Because we have to get out of fantasy land and stop thinking that everything lasts forever. Because even when people get married and they vow to death do us part, those relationships don't last forever. So if the relationship is over, sometimes we have to look at things like, okay, there's something better for me on the other side of what I thought was this great rainbow. I believe that we should stop having lust relationships. Like Neisha said, it might seem redundant to you guys when we say vet. Know exactly what you want. And find out if that person can give that to you. We talk about being compatible, but we also have to think about being suitable. You have a list of demands. You have a checklist that you go down. Make sure that person can do it. Not that he or she will try their best. They'll attempt to do it. If they can't do it, cut your losses. Love does not hurt. Love does not kill. That's my final thought. Brian, thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for these books.
Please get a copy.
Get a copy. Tell us where we can find all of your books.
You can find everything I've written on Amazon, and you can purchase it there.
Thank you for being on the show.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
And with that being said, like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. BGP, and we are out.